Let's continue our discussion of data gathering and move into data analysis. Well, of course, data come in broadly two forms, or research comes in broadly two forms, qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative are things you can count. Qualitative are, you can't count it in exact measures, you might have to observe it, for example. And so when it comes to getting data, whether it's qualitative data or quantitative data, when we got the data, now we have to figure out what to do with it, how to analyze the data. There are many ways to do this. And in fact, in the field of organization development, there are people who get PhDs just in this area. This is not my field of expertise, but those particular OD consultants, man, they're number scientists, and often they are designated as organizational psychologists. So anyway, the general idea here is we got the data, and so now we're going to have to analyze it. So let's talk about a couple of the major methodologies to do that. One thing we use we call content analysis. So let's say, for example, that you're trying to diagnose at a group level, a big group, an organizational levels here, the group levels here, and you go in and you do a diagnosis. And so to do this, you've selected several methodologies. You've decided to do some semi-structured interviews with some of the key people. You decided to send out a survey to get some more data from a larger group of people. And maybe you did some observations on some of the key leaders in action. So now you have all this data. What are you going to do? Well, content analysis is a way of summarizing comments, things that people told you, either in the surveys or that you observed and you had to write out yourself, or in an interview, for example, to summarize that stuff so that you can make sense of it. So you might have dozens of interviews and all this survey data, and you're looking at all this stuff. So what you would do is you would, as you read through it, you would start to see themes. Like, everybody's unhappy about something. Whoa, that's just popping up all over the place. So that would establish a theme. And then there may be another theme, is that people really are very happy about something else. That might be a particular theme. And so if you start to see themes, you would maybe create a spreadsheet or something, some kind of tool. There may be programs to help do this. And when you start to see a theme, you go, okay, well, so every time I see that theme, I'm going to capture meaningful comments or meaningful data from my research, and I'll plug it in. So all of a sudden, under this theme, you have 25 comments, and under the next theme, you have 37 comments from people. Under the next theme, so and so, you found out there are 4 major themes at work here, and now I have isolated out of hundreds of pieces of data a very compact set of comments along these major themes. So I've identified the major themes, and I have data from people either observed or surveys or interviews or whatever other methodology you use that back that up, that are summarized and put in an organized place. Then from that, you can make sense of that feedback, go back, talk to the client, have something to show, and make sense of the data. All right, now, there's another kind of analysis that's very widely used, and it's called force field analysis. Now, force field analysis is commonly used to determine how we're doing at getting a change in place, and there are tools and software and people who just do this for a career. But to give you the general idea, remember the change curve we talked about in an earlier video, where we go in, we do some diagnosis, and we determine the organization is here, and we think we can make the organization more effective by putting a certain change or intervention in place. And we want to get up here, right? And so along the way, we got that big bad wolf. Remember the big bad wolf? Well, the big bad wolf is really the forces who would like to derail the change, for good or for bad, right? And the change itself is one force. We're trying to change the organization, and then that big bad wolf is probably not just one thing, but it probably is several things. Let me give you some examples. The forces for change, we're trying to change something. We might have a new technology that we want to bring in place. Okay, I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I was working with an organization that invested tons of money on new equipment, new manufacturing equipment. Okay, new manufacturing equipment goes in place. It's a great idea. That new manufacturing equipment comes with new computers and new technology and new stuff. All right, we're going to put this in place. Now, all those workers who've been working on the old equipment, they aren't so up. They're not so happy about this newfangled stuff coming in. So there are resistors to that. The fear of change itself is a resistor. An individual employee might have extremely high level of skill on the old equipment, the old software. Now, not so much, right? So they're vested in the past. The group itself that's working on the older equipment has established a set of functioning group norms that work very well on the old system. But that's going to have to change because jobs are going to shift and people are going to have to learn new stuff and take on new levels of responsibility. And that shakes up that kind of almost tribal sense of normality that work teams often have. And so there's a big resistance to new technology. Now, other change interventions or forces for change, common things might include not just technology, but it might be just a new work process. Might be you have new materials. You're going to start making the same product out of different stuff. It could just be many different types of forces that want to bring change forward. Also, the forces that want to make the change might include management, change leaders, and other people who are on board with what you're trying to do, who are trying to move the organization forward. So what happens is we know there are going to be force-filled resistors. And so the OD consultant may want to do another layer of diagnosis at the point before we put the plan in place to see if we think that the change resistors are overwhelming, or I try to identify where they are and who the champions to resist change might be, so that we can have a better chance of moving through that big bad wolf and get past the force field and move the intervention into place and get it working and get the organization's group level, as we're talking about in this example, get their efficiency, their effectiveness, their output, their level of value creation up to the point that we hope to achieve in the beginning with the change intervention. Okay, that's all for now. I'm going to come back later and talk to you about the next level in our 4-step planned model of change. Thanks.